All right, everybody. Hey, get started. I'm actually gonna cut this stuff out, so we're good. We're good. I'll cut this first part off. Sorry about that. It's like the jump to attention. Oh, right on, man. Right on. And is it Pura Vida?
Pura vida.
And that's just like free flow, right? Like just life is good.
Yeah, it's just pure life, man. It's simple life, and it reminds me of like just accepting what is, really seeing the gratitude and the beauty with what is. And I think you've been here before. Have you not been here to Costa Rica before?
Not yet. We've
Okay.
talked about it. I got to come visit you.
It's the feeling, man. As soon as you get off the plane, there's an energy about this place. I would encourage anybody to do a little research on Costa Rica. It's a magical place. It's like the arm between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, so it has energy from both ends. This little community I'm in is on a crystal quartz mountain, and it just brings up stuff, brings up and out stuff. But the culture and fabric of the people is beautiful here, man. It's truly, if you don't adapt to it here, then you just will be uncomfortable and you just won't get it.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Awesome, man. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and Pura Vida, welcome. We have David Hall, a good friend of mine from a number of years now. I don't even know how far back it goes, but coming to us live from Costa Rica. And I'm going to have David share in a few minutes how he's optimized his lifestyle and how he's helping others do the same. But as always, I want to open with just what the podcast is about and why we're here. And so I truly believe that to optimize your influence is preparation to give the best of yourself in that moment to everyone you are connected to. And that's an amazing gift that's rooted in first honoring yourself to better serve those around you. And that, honestly, just kicking off, I always like to give a little bit of an introduction to my, to my guests and get everybody kind of caught up to speed a little bit on who these amazing people are. And so just to share a little bit about how David and I met, we met through a previous company, and we met randomly in a chance encounter. And I don't know if you remember that, but we had both been on a trip, and I didn't have an opportunity to connect with you on the trip, but our flight got delayed, and your flight got delayed leaving. And we were stuck as a group of people in the airport for a few hours. And what at first seemed like, oh my gosh, not that we wanted to leave this awesome environment and get back to life, but it's inconvenient. You've got a full day of travel ahead of you and you're trying to figure everything out. And all of a sudden I meet these amazing people and we start talking, start rapping, start having fun. And it created a lifelong friendship in my heart, because every time I would see you, and we would connect here and there, every time I would see you, there was just this energy and this connection. And I was like, dude, I love that guy. But just so that everybody knows, David has had a very, very successful and broad past and future. He was with the Fortune 40 company and then moved on from that, left that, and went into living the direct sales dream. And honestly, dude, you were very successful, wildly successful in that. That whole thing changed in the last, not even a year at this point. But led, it sounds like, to just some amazing discoveries and the rebirth of and the birth of a new company for yourself and potentially even a lifestyle. And so that's honestly, as I was looking at and inviting you onto this, in my mind, biggest thing is like you've taken an amazing step from my perspective and view as an outsider looking in. And the idea here is optimizing our influence, which is really optimizing ourselves. I mentioned that. So we can't influence others until we first take care of what's going on inside. And you're living that on a daily basis. And so I can't wait to dive in. We're just going to go with it. And who knows where it's going to take us, right? But it's going to be awesome. So everybody, I wanted to introduce you to David. And good morning, man.
Thank you so much, man. I'd turn my computer around, but that would make it all like fuzzy, but the view is just incredible. I'm basically sitting in this ecological village. It's called La Ecovilla. You can just go to laecovilla.com. But anyway, it's a little eco village with about 46 homes nestled into this this forest You know, there's monkeys and toucans, and of course there's iguanas, and there's just beautiful exotic birds, and just come along with me and just feel the energy. Like as you set up shop, whether it's work or whether it's breakfast or whether it's sitting with friends or family or kids, like there's so much energy being poured into me from just these trees and the nature. And so it allows me to have like this high vibe, you know? Yeah. And I love what you said in the beginning of your intro about optimized in the premise of your podcast and what your vision is, because I think our generation was really taught to serve others first, put others in front of you. Mm-hmm. And that was the noble thing to do. And I think what we're doing is we're catching up to that, to say, man, we always put ourselves last. And what does that leave us with? That leaves us with an empty, half-hearted, you know, a lot of projects half open, right. And a little bit and less intention, and optimizing yourself. And what's so beautiful about that is that was essentially my journey over the last almost 15, 16 months, is to just dive into what that even means. You know, I didn't know what that meant. You know, when you and I met, it was in a nutrition and in wellness and physical fitness or CrossFit, and that on the outside world is very, I wouldn't say it's easy, but that's the most noticeable thing for transformation. You know, as we approach the New Year's, it's like, go get a gym membership, go get a CrossFit membership, go hire a personal trainer, go talk to Arn about how to like set up my macros and my nutrition to see how I can improve my wellness. But I think what we're learning now is we can go beyond. We can even go past that into like, what does inner growth mean? You know, like what does that even mean? Like, where do I get started? And especially as a man, we had this aura and this reputation to live up to or live by. And, you know, we both have kids. And so what happens when you want to prioritize yourself and you have a spouse or a partner or a wife, you have a job and you have children?
Stuff falls off the wayside, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for most of us, it does. You hit so many amazing points there, and it's, again, I invite guests because of a reason, but it's more just, there's a feeling. It's like, I need to reach out to them and I need to invite them, and I don't exactly know how it goes. And so it creates a little bit of nervousness on my part and anxiety, which is kind of cool on the one hand. But on the other hand, it's amazing as we start talking and stuff starts popping up. And I'm like, that's why, because crazy. You just mentioned, you know, that a lot of us, it's that external thing that we're reaching for, and that we see. So you mentioned CrossFit, you mentioned diet, you mentioned, you know, the new year, losing weight, all of these external things mm-hmm. that we look to, and we look to those to inspire us and motivate us to do the thing. But at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, it's limiting. It only gets us so far. And unfortunately, once we reach that, that's a terminal point. And it's such a shallow, it's not to say that's not important, because it's important at some level. And I want to honor that for people. But at the same time, it's like, what takes us beyond and creates those habits that create true change? So that's huge.
You know what? And it's a work in progress. You know, I think, I read in this book by Eckhart Tolle, it's called Stillness Speaks. Probably take like a day to read it. It's super short, but there was a point in there that that message really sank in. And it was in the sense of, remove the pressure of the results, remove the pressure of what is going to happen, and enjoy the journey. Right. And then when you enjoy the doing, when you enjoy the journey, you've released all expectations of what is supposed to happen. You know, like the idealistic result, and you find yourself doing what you're passionate and what you love, right? And we've kind of heard stuff like that. You know, do what you love, do what inspires you, and the money will come, right? But in our society, at times that can be a bit challenging. So yeah, it's you know, as you were sharing that, I was on a plane a couple weeks ago, and I was finding myself in kind of a lull, like a little bit of like I should be feeling so good. I'm on vacation. I just saw my dad, and I'm not with my kids. I'm traveling alone. And I was like, what's up with my energy right now? And I had to do, and I wrote down this little pie chart. We all know what a pie chart is. And I just do basically 4 equal pieces of this pie. And I was like, all right, this is my energy pie chart. And I was like trying to be all creative. And I was like, yes, the Pieway to expansion. And I wrote it down. But anyways, I allowed myself to look at the things that were carrying my energy, and in our society many times, and how I was feeling. I use my personal experience for most of everything, is that my energy in that pie was being consumed by things that were either external, that were, kind of like rudimentary. They weren't like inspiring. They weren't purposeful. They weren't in my passions, but they were taking up a lot of my time, right? It's almost like the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what raises my vibration? Like truly raises my vibe. And since I moved to Costa Rica, I've had to evolve that, right? It used to be going to CrossFit, and that would be just exerting my, my energy, my testosterone, building muscle, and it was able to be a release for me. But coming here, I've had to reestablish what any of those things are. And when you look up and you put yourself in an environment where there's no TVs, there's not like a cafe right outside the neighborhood where I can go. There's not, so you have I'm on a river. It's like, okay. So, as I started going through my own personal transformation, I found myself sitting at the river by myself. I'm like, people said to go sit by the river, or people said to go meditate. I'm like, that's not a world that I came from, and so I had to learn how to do that as a man. It's a different thing. At least a man in my generation who grew up in team sports and in CrossFit and the corporate America, it was it's like almost like the yin to the yang. And so what I was told is just to focus on your breathing. One of the first steps in going inward is to turn the noise off. What's the easiest way to turn the noise in the outside world off? You close your eyes, right? Once we close our physical eyes, then there's nothing to see. At first you might see your black eyelids, but then your mind starts to decompress, and then you just start going within your heart. You start breathing slower and smoother, and you start feeling, and you start listening and hearing the sounds of nature. And it has an energetic effect on our being. It's really crazy. But anyways, and I'm not going to go into a soapbox about my pie chart, but I'll show you one piece.
I hope you do, actually.
What's that?
I wanted to, I definitely would love it. I was even thinking if that's beneficial, if you think that's beneficial to others, if you want to walk us through.
I can walk you through really quick, because I think it's so simple, Arn. I mean, it's just a quick assessment of, I was talking to Arn before we went on here, is awareness of where we currently are. Like awareness of like, this is who I am. This is how I feel. This is where my physical body is. This is the life that I've chose. These are my kids, my partner, my spouse, like what I do. It's the awareness of it. And then it's the acceptance of it, because many times we want what we don't have, and it creates pressure on ourselves, and we carry it. We carry it into our conversations. We carry it into our interactions. And so that's called density, and we think of density as like I'm carrying a really heavy backpack. And if you put it in physical terms, it's easy to understand. Like if I'm carrying a really heavy backpack and then I just put it down, I'm like, whoa, yeah, feels so good. Or in weightlifting terms, like you get that 1 rep max and you drop the bar and you're just like, I'm glad I don't have to do that again. Like I'm glad that I pushed myself, but like I feel so free right now. Well, it's the same thing with emotional weight and spiritual weight. So this really helped me, and it's super simple. I'll walk through a couple of these. And hopefully the text isn't flipped around, but either way, I can share this afterwards too. Here's you, and here's a pie. It's very easy. This chart just says Pieway to our expansion, and it says, how do I find my flow? And my flow equals my state of happiness. All we are is just trying to be happy, And how do we? When we were 7 years old, happiness meant one thing, but now I just turned 40, and happiness is coming from more within. And so I just use this as easy. It's a balanced pie chart, 4 equal pieces. This is an exercise we can all do. Just get a sheet of paper and be like, where am I currently in my reality? Because it's beautiful, because we're ending a year, right? And we're like reassessing like what we want next year. And your pie could be made up of tons of things. This is really fun. I just wrote down some examples. It may not be legible, but essentially this is just things that we fill energetically into our pie. Everybody was laughing at the church and sex being next to each other.
I love it.
That was like a hit. But anything, youth sports, family, hiking, surfing, wakeboarding, CrossFit, going to the gym, going on dates, going out to dinner, Netflix binges, traveling, sleeping, social media, working, writing, reading, whatever it is. What I felt though, I was a consummate like football fan, like a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And I spent so much time watching football growing up. Like whether it was watching football, playing football, fantasy football, all of it. And it was very time consuming.
Right.
It was also very energy consuming.
Yeah.
And so what conversations would I have with people? It would be either about football, about work, or about family. And it was just kind of narrowing, right?
Sure.
And so what I came to what I feel is the most optimal version of what our energetic pie is, and it can be defined in many different ways, is I think our current reality is like this, where you see nature, self, and service in like really, really small pieces. And then the rest of our consuming life, very busy life, is the other. So that's where our energy is going. And I don't think that's very expansive, because I was feeling it on this plane. And ultimately, your body doesn't lie. It's sending signals to us that we need to shift. We need to change. We need to expand, I should say. And sometimes we think of change as in like, oh, well, this is who I am, right? We just expand. We go beyond. And this is where I feel is our most optimal version of ourself. And this is the three big pieces are nature, self, and service. And like I said, what's that?
I was going to say, is nature, would you define that in the absolute terms of like your view, which is what I imagined actually with this call. I was envisioning you being in this forest scene, and I was like, man, I wonder if he's going to come to me under a little hut, or something.
I should have, Arn. I was on the back porch and I was looking at lighting and I was like looking at the internet and I was like, maybe before we log off, I can just at least kind of show you my view. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Inspiring. Fun story from yesterday that I experienced with something similar to that. But is nature like that, or are you viewing it more from the nature of like our nature and our personal journey? All of the above. How would you define that? That's one thing. I think the self. If I recall from what I just saw, you've got self and you've got other or giving service. So how would we define the nature piece?
That's a beautiful question, and I did my very best. I made a little sheet, and I can take a picture of this and post it. And I just kind of wrote down nature, self, and service, and just gave some examples, because sometimes people get stuck. They don't know what that means. It's so broad.
Yeah,
it's like when someone's like, "Go meditate," or "Go sit in stillness," or "Go do yoga," and you've been a football player your whole life. You're like, I don't know what that means. But when it comes to nature, it's all the earth around us. It's really connecting with the land. It sounds like kind of hippie-ish, and maybe that's what I'm becoming more of. And I don't mean it in like the 1960s version of hippies, but like I walk on the ground. We've probably heard of getting grounded. Yeah. You don't need to live in Costa Rica to do that. You could just go in your backyard and walk in the grass or walk on the rocks. If you have access to water as we expand it's an extremely powerful tool for us to increase our vibrancy and increase our energy and increase our state of mind and open our heart. And when you start looking at nature as it's also a living being and it's communicating to you as you communicate energy to it, versus just looking at it as in it's like a physical, it's a physical thing. It's a concrete thing that has nothing behind it other than what you physically see, then you're missing the point. So when you look at, going in your backyard or going to a park, you have to shift what your awareness is of the whole entire situation versus just, I'm sitting at the park and then now I'm on my phone, right? It's going to the river and actually going in the river, touching the river, connecting with the water. It's just slowing your mind down to really allow yourself to connect in your presence. Like, this is all I've got in my existence, in my reality right now. And I chose this.
Yes.
But the more you expose yourself to it, the more it actually slows down and the more you're able to have a gratitude and appreciation for it. When I moved to Costa Rica, I wanted to learn how to surf because I've always been very fearful of surfing and I've always loved sport. And so I started just like looking at the water and just like sending love to the water and blessing the water and saying, hey man, I'm just here to play.
Yeah.
I'm just here to play and you can play with me and toss me around and I will be respectful and we will have fun. And I stopped having the fear of like the Jaws movie from like 1980 something, all these little things that like from the outside world, they planted seeds in my subconscious. Like as a little person, they planted all these seeds of fear, and that's part of control, right? That's part of the matrix, is to control our minds so we can be the puppets. But nonetheless, nature, since I've moved here, became a major piece of my expansion because it was a very small piece of my expansion before. Nature for me was going to play golf with my dad or playing in a soccer league outside. Like, and that may be very different. You're on the West Coast, and the West Coast of the US is way more connected to nature. So you guys are generally more peaceful, calm, more like exploratory, more like earthly. And, but I also put nature as in meditate, gardening, swimming at the pool. So it's a major piece in expansion. Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that, man, oh man, you hit so many amazing pieces. That's an incredible tool and at the end, I want everybody to know that I always post down below ways that you can get in touch with my guests. And so you'll have an opportunity to reach out to David and be able to communicate with him about some of this stuff. Because this is what a powerful process. I mean, even in this couple of minutes, and that's what I love. I'm a consummate learner. I love to learn, and in some ways, it's a crutch, and it's almost because it's easier sometimes to learn than it is to take action. It's easy to say, well, I'm preparing for something. I'm learning about that, and not actually taking the step. And so that's been the challenge for me, is actually going, actually doing, actually becoming. But I love that. And, the connection to nature, I think, again, we often portray or we look at other people's examples and we say, well, of course they're able to do this. Look at them, look at their environment, look at their family, look at their upbringing, look at their income, look at, all this stuff. But you mentioned that even in our suburban area, there are ways to connect. And I said I would tie back to this. I'm facilitating as a health coach for a friend of mine in his coaching program. And so each week I go online and I get an opportunity to talk about the stuff that I love to do. And it's awesome. And so yesterday I was in the car, wasn't able to do it at home. And I was in the car driving. And as I'm driving and trying to get between where I was and where I needed to go, which was my son's basketball game, and do this live Facebook chat, I'm like, what do I want my view to be? And so we've got a beautiful river running through town. It used to be one of the most polluted rivers in America. Now you go, it's absolutely gorgeous. And they've done a really nice job of reclaiming it. But I'm like, I've got to get to the river. And water, it connects me. And I know that. I'm aware of that. It's really neat to hear you say that. But I was not able to get to the river because they've built up homes all around the places that usually gave me access right down to it. And they're happening like that, right? So it's closed off those sections. You could access it, but you have to walk. So I found a little pine tree and I parked right in front of that, focused on that. Wasn't quite the experience that I wanted, but that was why I thought, I want to be able to give of myself in this moment to the people that I'm sharing with. And I know that that's going to come most from a place of this connection and rather than the busyness of everyday life. And there's so much more to go with there, but I want to come back to this idea of Costa Rica. And how did you tell me how you chose Costa Rica? Because my recollection is you were going to Costa Rica as a vacation or with the family. I mean, I'm going back, and again, I felt a connection. I pay attention to the things that you've done because I like you, and I love the journey. And I just that time in the airport there was, it just boom, minutes, but it seemed like years. And so what happened? Like, how did that, short, whatever you feel like releasing, how did that become to where you are right now?
Yeah. I mean, we went through a journey about 2.5 years ago of minimalizing. We started sensing energetically, like we just wanted to scale back. We found ourselves really living the American dream. We had a happy family with 2 kids and a big house and suburban neighborhood, nice cars, good incomes. We worked for Dell in Austin. And so we kind of had that discovered. And then when we started in the direct sales business, we started receiving information more of an entrepreneurial, living life on your terms, being more free, not being like in a crutch. And that message really spoke to us. So when we left our careers, we just started working from home and creating that freedom, still an umbrella, like structure, like a governing body, so to speak. We weren't just like free entrepreneurs. We followed a system, but that taught us different values and different things. So we started, and then we watched this documentary, Minimalism, on Netflix, and it was just really powerful. You take documentaries like a grain of salt, but we took the messages in there and saying, do I love this? Do I need this? And that started becoming the process of providing us the answers that we needed, whether it was, do we need that new shirt or new hat or new clothes or new car or new house or new. And we started just being more in our hearts with that. So we went from the big house and the nice cars, and we just downsized. We went into a small house. We had a family of 5 at that point. We ended up having another child. We had 3 kids, and we went into a small home, older home, renovated it. And during that time of renovation, we went and traveled the East Coast of the US for a month during the summer. And so comes full circle. We lived in that house for a year. We experienced the smaller scale living. We were really starting to appreciate it. And because what happens is when you remove in our world, we remove the big house, which had to be full of stuff because it's bigger house, you fill it. When we scaled it all down, it opened up space for us to connect more with nature, connect more with our kids, connect more with ourselves, find more time, find more space. And then the year after that, we were like, let's do an international trip this year, for the summer. The kids are out. What are you going to do? And we worked from home. We could work from anywhere we had a computer. We found this place Alicia had found this place online. And I came to Costa Rica 16 years ago for graduation. So I'd always known I liked the land. Sure. But we found ourselves in this community, and this community, it was just different, Arn. It has really opened up things within us. That's how we found our way here. And, after a month, we just were like, maybe we just stay, like, what do we have to lose? We got our kids started in the school. They have an alternative school here. And they started going to school, and from then to now, the world has completely changed in my reality. The beautiful thing is all 3 of my kids speak Spanish. I have a 3-year-old who is able to communicate in Spanish. My 12-year-old is incredible. He just did a theater performance yesterday, and it was all in Spanish. Really? And my daughter, who's 8, is also communicating in Spanish. So it's very interesting to see 3 blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids in Costa Rica, like communicating in Spanish. But that's the shortest version of just honestly following your heart, right? And understanding that you have nothing to lose. Sure. You have nothing to lose when you break free of whatever it is. And that's not to say our life was bad. Our life was incredible in the States. But we just followed our flow, there's no coincidences in life. And when you start seeing that there's no coincidences and they're all synchronicities, you start opening your heart a little bit more to, why am I here? Why did I just meet this person? These chance encounters aren't chance encounters when your mind slows down and your heart opens. Right. And it's been a wild ride.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I often wonder just what you're speaking. I wonder what my life would be like, what all of our lives would be like if we were aware of our connections and our interactions along the way. My wife, Nikki, and I, we met and crossed paths over the span of 15 years prior to actually meeting officially. Mm-hmm. And then when we met, things moved very quickly. But when we started recollecting stories, like we crossed paths directly, like direct interactions with each other over the, when it was nuts. Distances of, 300 miles away. Like I traveled to Seattle and she was playing volleyball. And it's so neat. I mean, I'm so grateful that we were able to connect those pieces. I think that a lot of us, if we started to think about our interactions, who we're with, we would probably find a lot of similarities that we've actually crossed paths with those people in a lot of different ways over time. And finally, we're aware and we're open. We're at a state in life where we can connect. So that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I think that feel from that, one of the feelings that I felt is fear. It's fear that holds in my life, that holds me back from taking the step to do the things. You know, there's so many things, like you guys downsizing the home. Most of us have a very difficult time or difficulty doing that in a world where more is better, and especially in the States. And that's really applauded, to have those things. And like you said, not that they're bad, but it's nuts on the one hand. Like, most people will look at something like that and they'll be like, well, what are you doing? You know? And I'm sure you probably heard that. And so that's an amazing just growth and progress that I think we can all learn from. Maybe not, it doesn't have to be to the extreme that it was for you, but just little steps can make such great transformation in our own lives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Arn. And that's when and that, honestly, it kind of is a segue into the other piece of this little chart that I was saying. And me and you've already kind of talked about this one, self. And self, that evolves, you know, like that's what starts to open up. And when I look at the things that are self-care, you know, when we really start honoring our body, because we can touch our body, we understand that, right? If we have 3 different bodies, like if we have the physical body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, like we know what to do with the physical body, right? Like we know how to care for it. We know how to trim our beard and brush our teeth and get our hair cut, you know, and physically work out, you know. And then there's the self-love. Like, how are we loving and honoring ourselves? I mean, this is going real deep. This is like when we get out of the shower, are we looking at ourselves with love and gratitude? Or are we judging ourselves? Right. And maybe for me and you, like, we're pretty fit. We're still relatively young. Like, maybe we don't have that, but you know, what if it's somebody that's overweight? What if it's a woman who carries the pressure of this physical body, you know, and the allure and what a woman is supposed to look like? And, you know, it's the self-love. And so it's the activity and the action and the doing of expanding those things. Right. And it takes us coming to acceptance with what is and awareness of what we're feeling, and then taking action to actually move us past it. You know, in the self-love and self-care, I'm going to kind of read some of these. These are the things that I've done. These are the things that I've coached people on. Like when Arn and I were coaching people with wellness, a lot of times it was not even the wellness. It was the psychology. It was the mindset. It was the heart. It was the support. It was the accountability, and nothing has really changed. It's just more expansive for me. So for me, it's the education. You mentioned being a constant learner. Like, are we humble enough to always be learning with an open heart, and knowing that what we learn, we can share? Because the best thing that we can give in this world is our presence. It really is. Like right now, the only thing that exists in this entire world is me and Arn. Honestly, I don't have children. I don't have a partner. I don't live in Costa Rica. This is all I have. And if I'm intentional and I invest in it and I'm present with it, then I'm in gratitude and I'm in alignment and I'm in joy, and there's nothing else that really matters. And so I love that. The reading and writing. I mean, like, what are we reading? What are we writing? What are we watching? All these things are coming in, and whatever comes in has to come out. And so, you know, I'm reading Wayne Dyer's book, The Power of Intention, because one of my shadows, or one of my characteristics is half-heartedness. And what that means is I'll open up a lot of projects. I'll go half in on all of them, and I don't really get any of them done. And then when they do get done, they don't have like the power and like the full energy, because we've been trained to multitask, to do a lot of things, get it all like relatively done. And the people that can multitask are successful because they can do a lot of things, but they're burning up inside. And so the reading, the watching, what are we watching or what are we not watching anymore? Like now I'm staring at trees versus I used to stare at huge big screens and whatever. There's nothing wrong with people that do that. This is not judgment. This is just when I removed something, what happened after I removed it. Is my heart opened? I started connecting and learning more about myself, and I feel more at peace, ultimately, the energy. And starting to write. And, you know, people that are like, well, I don't like to write. Sometimes just get a sheet of paper and ask yourself, how did I get here? And just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until there really is you don't know. Your mind can't comprehend.
Right.
Art is another form of getting into self-love, self-expression. One of the things, I went to this men's retreat called the Mankind Project, and it was a lot of inner work, you know, about the inner child within us. And what I learned from that is I wasn't speaking out. I wasn't expressing myself. I wasn't standing up for my truth. Even as a little boy, we have a truth, right? And many times our dad or someone of influence may tell us something and we feel this urge to like speak back, not in a confrontational way, but like, that isn't me. I don't align with that truth. And out of fear, we don't say anything. And we carry that through life. And it affects us in our careers. It affects us in our relationships. It affects us in our parenting. And that retreat really helped me just to kind of let all that out, where I only have my truth. And if I'm not speaking my truth and being my truth and not being my wholeness, then I create more fear, I create more resistance, and I create more pain within myself. And then it becomes, I'm out of balance, I'm out of alignment.
Right.
Spiritual growth was a big one. You know, for some, it may be like a sanctioned religious type of community that helps them. For some, it may be spiritual. It may be the other end of things where they're doing mindfulness and they're reading things about yoga and meditation and cosmic stuff. It doesn't really matter how people get there, as long as they're on the path of expanding their bubble.
Yeah.
Music was another one, Arn. A lot of the music I listened to wasn't necessarily raising my vibration. So all of these things are self. And what we pour in self comes out. And, that was one of the premises of me launching a clothing company. It was just, like put things on. This is when we put clothing on, it's an energetic vibration of who we are inside, and it's a reflection of outside.
Totally.
So yeah, that was a long.
So that's it's so beautiful. And like when you're talking through, my simple mind is going, okay, like taking snapshots, and you're doing, I love the depth and the connectedness that you're sharing with, absolutely amazing. On the threads and the Ascension Threads piece, that's an exciting part. I have not, and by the way, you mentioned you just turned 40. Happy birthday. And I meant to kick that off at the beginning, and I was like, I got to come back to that. That's so awesome. I tell you, the 40s are amazing. Best decade of my life so far. And it's been fabulous. And so, welcome.
Thank you. I love hearing that.
That was this hat. This is maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. And part of it was on this online space. I mean, I like myself in a hat. And so I'm like, I want to be wearing a hat, but I'm like, what do I want to share with the world? And the companies that I wear and believe in, great companies. I don't wear trash, but at the same time, I'm like, that's not me. And so I messaged, use the Facebooks, and I messaged our community group, and I'm like, hey, where can I go to find some cool Idaho swag? Because I'm here in Idaho, got some pride. Everybody wants to move here, so I might as well be proud of it, right? And went down to this little shop where they produce their own stuff and everything. And there's actually one that I loved, but it wasn't the same hat. Go back. Hopefully they've changed it. It's got a heartbeat, and the heartbeat goes into the shape of Idaho. And it's like, it's super cool, super clean. But I like this because you got the I and the D and the nature piece. I'm like, that's me. And and so, I'm like, I want to identify with this. And so the other day, I saw DH on there, you've got one of your hats, and it has an awesome slogan on it and everything. So I was on last night actually looking at the link that you sent me, and I'm deciding what I'm going to get, to launch into the new year. But I feel 100% what you're saying, that everything down to what we put on our bodies, what we put in our bodies, what we wear and portray to others, it sends a message. And I always say this, especially in this day and age where people are creating, I don't want to go down this road, but where people are creating lines, party lines and things, political and all this. It's like, vote with your dollars. And people, because people are always saying, well, I don't have a vote because of just system, whatever. And it's like, no, you do. And then they're like, well, how can my $15 purchase make a difference? It does. Because if you're leading with your heart and what you believe, people are going to see that, and they're going to want to do more of that. And your purchase leads to others and influencing others. And I believe that makes change. And then, be firm on it. But we're going to have a link at the end for Ascension Threads, and you guys have to check it out, because great men's, women's, children's clothes, hats, and just fabulous stuff. So I actually thought in my mind, I'm like, could I possibly get the hat here by the time we meet up?
Awesome.
Because I think it was Wednesday, and I was like, that would have been so cool. But
it's not that fast.
Hey, I want to come back to an idea while we're talking about self. I know, in the transformation space and as a transformation coach, one of the things that you've mentioned as we've been talking, and then you had mentioned before, is masculinity. And and a few minutes ago, you talked about like your old life connected with football, Kansas City Chiefs. That is a very, from an American standpoint, a very masculine trait. Like, you meet up with the dudes this time of year and the conversation goes to sports. And so you mentioned that as you started to look into yourself, that you had to get quiet, you had to close your eyes. It's something that a lot of people have trouble with, but I feel like that's especially something that men have trouble with, and especially connecting with men. And so, how do you feel like this connectedness and self-care? Because dudes are supposed to I don't need self-care. I'm tough, I'm strong, I'm virile, that's the whole thing is I can handle it all. I don't need to do any of that stuff. So how is the connection? How do we make that connection? And how does that inspire and bring out the masculine self? How does that help us become more of the man that we're supposed to be?
Man, that's big, Arn. Really quick, before I answer that, because that's a big one, is everything's connected and everyone is connected. And when we think of when you were looking for the hat and you had spoke about Ascension Threads and just like the clothing we wear and everything is a reflection from inner to outer, but it's energy and frequency. Really quick, as we look at the masculinity, look at the energy in a football stadium. Think of your team losing and what energy that you're carrying. Right. Think of your team winning, what energy that you're carrying. And there's a book called The 5 Levels of Attachment by, I believe it's Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. And he actually uses the football example, the real football, because they're from Mexico. But it really allowed me to go within myself. Like when I'm watching a game, is my energy peace and love and like tranquility, or is it like on edge? And I'm like exactly, like I can't sit still. I actually don't physically even enjoy any of it, And so everything is connected, but also everything is energy. And so we choose the energy. We choose our energy. And so it's crucial. And as we go into masculinity, I'll narrow down my last year, because that's where I've really redefined what masculinity even is. So, and this is a check for everybody that's listening to this about attachment and codependency. And so about a year and a half ago, my wife came in and was going through like a spiritual awakening. You've heard that term before. And so part of that was that we weren't aligned to be together anymore. And it shook my world, right? I moved here. We built this beautiful family, never had any arguments, never had a fight, never had any infidelity, none of it. It was just, and I'm in a different country with my 3 kids with it was a shock to the system. But what it did is it shocked my system to go inward. I had nobody to blame. I had nobody to run to and hide, but I did have this country. I did have this land. I did have this river. I did have the resources that all of a sudden happened to be on my bookshelf, and the podcasts and the audibles and the stuff that started to come in. And so what happened is I started redefining who I am. And it started with redefining my power, redefining my independence, redefining my strength. And it wraps into masculinity, right? And so as we redefine masculinity, one of the things that I experienced in the last year and a half was massive means of expression, massive means of crying. And I had thought to myself, man, I don't think I've cried in 15 years. And I've had 3 kids. I love my kids. I just wasn't able to break free of this, this block. And some people that's not hard for them. But I think expressing ourselves in front of the young men, our young boys, and not being afraid to be ourselves, to be our truth, because we've been in that position that maybe we were watching a movie or something sad happened and we felt the urge, like it would feel really good to cry right now, but we just like suppress it.
Right.
So think of that as like a microcosm of a lot of things, like in the macro world. Like we suppress and suppress and suppress, but where does it go? It doesn't go anywhere. It creates density and heaviness on our being and whatever part of our body that it wants to affect, whether it's physical, spiritual, emotional. And in the human world, most of the time it affects our spouse or our partner, or our relations, or our kids, or our boss, or our clients, whatever. So when it comes to masculinity, it's like we have to redefine it. Like we have to really go way beyond the patriarchal systems and really come into our self, into love, into connection, into unity, into oneness. I mean, it sounds crazy, but so how do we do that? We start shifting the things that are coming in so we can shift the things that are coming out. And man, you know, it's already moving. There's all kinds of stuff now about hypermasculinity and I wanted to rewind. This is not about masculinity, but there's a documentary that I watched a few years ago that literally changed my life. It's called The Shift by Wayne Dyer, and you can just YouTube video it. And when you open that with an open heart, he talks about kind of going from the morning of your life to the afternoon of your life and to the evening of your life and how things change. And it literally, when you start identifying that you are not your things, you are not your material possessions, you are not your roles and your identities, there's things beyond that. So that was a big one. But I think my most important lesson on the masculinity thing is the way to express ourselves. The more that we resist, the more we prevent ourselves from being our truth, our true nature, which is not told to us. It's something that we are within us. It's what we came here with. We are already programmed to be exactly who we are, right? We were coached and told and all these things came into our being. And now at our age, we're starting to push a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah.
And where our generation is redefining masculinity, it's where it's completely erased. It's the macho behavior and the man up and, you know, you throw like a girl, and these things were told to us and taught to us, and we may have carried them, but they're going away. Yeah. And it takes people talking about consciousness. It takes men reading books about spiritual growth. It takes men doing some yoga or sitting and meditating, and their son, who's only known them to play football with them, like, what are you doing? Like, I don't get it. Why are you holding a rock? You know, like, it's just a shift in how you change energy. And I wanted to change. I had no choice, right? I got confronted with the hardest card that you could ever be confronted with, which is the fear of loss, fear of rejection. And here I am, just using that as it's fuel. It's fuel. Yeah. So
I don't know how to put it into words. You've done a wonderful job, but I feel what you're talking about. And I think that's the gray area that I think so many men struggle with. And I include myself in that. Like, you know, I love the fact that nothing that that we've done here has been, sorry, my wife's calling in. I'm upstairs, honey.
Live caller.
Nothing that we've talked about is exclusionary. I love that, you know, you like, the whole conversation has been meeting people where they're at, helping people on their own path and their own journey. And I think that with men, we're all on different phases of this, but I see it in my friends. I see it in our community. You know, sometimes I feel it maybe goes a little bit to the extreme, but there's some balance in between. And you know, last week I had a moment when my younger son, it was a very stressful day a week ago today. We had, I think in that day, we had 4 basketball games that we were running across town with, trying to be at each one. We had a piano recital, all of this stuff. And we're going to the piano recital, and he just wasn't himself. And so it was great. I kind of walked him through a visualization and helped him remember a moment that was his happiest moment, which had actually happened a few weeks earlier. Which was really neat to hear him talk about that. But just that process and practice freed him up a little bit to be able to move into that moment and go in. And he hadn't practiced up a ton. And that's probably why he was most nervous. So it wasn't his best performance, but he did it. And even as he was moving through, he had confidence. And I'm like, you know what? It wasn't Mozart, but it was amazing because he was there in the moment and confident in the moment. And I think by releasing ourselves, and especially as men, and removing some of those pressures that we feel externally, just realizing the best we can do is what we're doing right now, and open ourselves up, not to be fearful, but to be accepting of this moment. It gives us a chance to really be who we are. It gives us a chance to be a leader. It gives us a chance to be quote unquote strong, like all of these terms that often that I think are associated with masculinity. I just think a lot of times, you mentioned the bravado, the machismo. I mean, I think a lot of times we try to overdo it, and we've done that for generations, to bring it out and be like, wow, we're all in, we got to make this happen. And no, we just let it happen.
Arn, that's so good what you shared there. I wrote down, because sometimes I can get off track because there's just so much energy. There's so many messages coming through me that I want to express, but love is the answer.
Yeah.
Our children want love.
Yeah.
The greatest way that we can influence and change toxic masculinity is to give true love without attachment, without conditions. Conditional love is a very, very, very powerful thing, I think, in society.
Yeah.
And if people don't understand what conditional love is, think if they've had a pet or a dog, and dogs are unconditionally loving of their owners.
Right.
You know, you could have the worst day, you could be mean, and then when you walk in that door, there's nothing but love. And what do they say to us other than their energy? What they can say, woof, but all they do is express through words, really, but just through energy. And you feel love. And there's all the statistics, whoever has a dog, it extends your life 7 years. But it's the same thing with children. And sometimes as parents, we are carrying things that we've learned from our parents, right? Or from our leaders or our coaches. And the young generation needs less of us than we think.
Right.
They just want us to genuinely care, express, and love and support them for their divinity, for their uniqueness.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to be me. I just want them to know that I love them. I'm here for them. Should they want to learn anything that I may be able to help them with, great. But I'm here to nurture their purpose in coming here. And how we express love is different in a highly masculine energy versus what it's evolving into. And so we used to think expressing love was like, we bought you all the things you need. We took you to all your sports. We provided a good dinner, a beautiful house and roof over your head. We take you on fancy vacations. But if you were to go deep within the inner child, do they want any of that? Do they need any of that? No. They enjoy those things if you're present with them, if you're really in it with them, if you really are loving and connected. But if you're just doing it and going through the motions because everybody else is, there's the detachment of love, connection in there, and it becomes not as powerful as maybe the initial vision was. I will say, from a masculinity standpoint, for men listening to this, there's a book that really pierced my heart and opened it up to like really most of everything. And I do reference books because I'm a reader. And the reason why I'm a reader, I do listen to audiobooks too, but the reason why I'm a reader is because I'm the one writing the book when I'm reading it, because there's nobody telling me the story. So it may have been written in the words, but when I settle myself and get into silence, which is a problem that we have as men, we don't like to sit still, is it allows me to truly dive in. But the book is called Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. I encourage you to read it. It's something you will not just read once, but it really opened my heart of what love is. And it's not just about romantic love, but yeah.
I love it. That man. So like so many of these, it's so funny. I enjoy. It's honestly, it's neat. It's like you talk about different careers and things, and one of the things we would always say is you get to choose who you work with, and that's a great thing. And that's one of the most fun things about this is like I get to say yes or no. I mean, I'm the one sending out the invitation, but you get to say yes or no. We have a choice, but when we get on these, I mean, I just there's so many things, man. I can literally talk for hours, and people need to know. I mean, you and I, the longest conversation we've ever had in one place because we're always moving. You know what I mean? Agreed. So it's awesome. But I think there's so many amazing things. I've got tons of homework. So So what I wanted to maybe move into and just close with is, you talked about nature, you talked about self, and you mentioned service.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about the other stuff too, but we're talking about trying to minimize those things. On the service side, you've got a podcast. So the You've Been Programmed podcast. You've got your clothing brand, Ascension Threads. And then you're doing transformational coaching and one-on-one Costa Rica transformation experiences. Is that fair? So, that's a lot of different things. I'm going to connect all of those pieces at the bottom. What's the gist of it? Like, what can we take from that, and how can you, like, what services do you offer, and how can you help people that want to learn more about this, that want to start their own journey or pick up where they're at?
Yeah, thank you so much. The last piece of the three major pieces of the pie chart that I've created is service. And this is something that I had to learn. I didn't know what service meant. I thought service was only really like two things: was serving in the military and serving at your church or some type of community interaction. But the first thing I put on this list of services is our expression, right? We came here with unique gifts. Out of the 7 billion plus people here on planet Earth, we are the only versions of ourselves. And we came here with things that need to be shared, not for profit, but for purpose, for our alignment, for our peace and tranquility and our harmony with our souls, like development. And if we don't express that, we feel pain, we feel out of alignment, we feel uncomfortable, we feel overwhelmed, we feel anxiety, and I always reflect back, like, the past can lead to depression and the future can create anxiety. So just bring yourself to presence. Let all those stories go, right? So the past has already been lived, but yet we carry it into our presence every day to create more. Like our present moment isn't enough. Like, this is not enough. But the ways that we can serve is, of course, first and foremost, by serving and sharing our gifts. You mentioned the podcast and the clothing company and personal coaching, one-on-one coaching, and some one-on-one Costa Rican retreats that are like really personal deep dives into transformation. And those are just things that I have to share. I didn't start with, how do I make money? It was, what do I love? What am I called to do? And then let's do it. Let's do it in a way that you feel is most beneficial to self and what's most beneficial to others. The other ways that we serve and we do these things, our friends, our children, our community, our partnerships, our marriages, and our organizations, we work, we teach, we coach, we mentor. I will spend a few seconds on the partnership and the marriage one. As I'm transitioning out, I will say that as we're in partnership, and this goes out to men, as we're in partnership or relationships for an extended period of time, we take for granted that relationship. Take it from someone whose 14-year relationship just recently ended, right? And now me and my ex-wife we've always been best friends. We host a podcast together. It's called You've Been Programmed Podcast, and we're here to break through programs. There's not too many, former husband and wives that can work and integrate in that sense, and share, because we were brought here together to integrate, to collaborate, and to share. But I will say is we need to intentionally invest in the people that we're with every single day. If we're in a partnership and if we're in a marriage, what are we doing from our heart? Act as if that's the first and last time you're ever going to see that person. Are we investing in them? Is there soft music and candles in the room? Is the bed made? Are the sheets clean? Is there an energy that you are creating of love? Or is it, I worked all day, I'm tired, I'm going to go in my bed, I got to catch up on emails, I'm on my phone and she's on her phone, and then we fall asleep. It can't be that way. And if it is that way, we can all shift. And that's a part of serving self, and it's a part of serving others. But we aren't guaranteed to be in relationship or whatever. So whoever we're with, give that, and so just create that magic, because I believe it's lacking. And what happens is it leads to either breaking up or, different relationships or whatever. I feel like that's a big thing with the conditional love as well, with conditional love and partnership. We're married, so we assume that we can do all of these things. We can leave the dishes there, we can not cook dinner, we can leave the bed messy, or we can just assume. And so, one more book would be The Four Agreements. I think you've read that one, but The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz is incredible. And that's like your baseline. I'm about to start my spiritual growth, or I'm about to start my personal expansion. The Four Agreements is where to start. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. But yeah, my You've Been Programmed podcast, I encourage you to go there. It's really breaking through some boundaries. It really is a pretty expansive, and it's not for me to toot my horn, but I listen to it very objectively, and it's beautiful content. It's challenging status quo. It's kind of looking at the matrix as an all-encompassing governing body. And once we find self, we are powerful, not to go and fight the change, but just to be our truth. And it's a beautiful representation. Ascension Threads is just a beautiful company sharing peace and love. Just, whether it's short messages, this is one of my shirts, Namaste. This is about tranquility and peace, but it's just the energy. And then the coaching is just something I love to do. And I'm here to offer that to people that are looking for that. And so, yeah, I'm just living the dream, man. I'm just living life here, and I'm blessed to be on your podcast, this interview, and connecting with you, and look forward to sharing more in the future, and connecting more and working together.
Absolutely. I love it, man. My mind has been racing. As you can see, I've been taking notes as we go through. It's so fun. The timing is perfect. And I know that there are takeaways in here that somebody's going to hear, somebody's going to grab onto, and they're going to run with it. And it's going to absolutely change their life. It's going to change the people's lives around them. And I think that's, man, I mean, it's one thing to change ourselves, and going back to right at the very beginning, it's like we've been raised, and I agree, we've been raised to put others first. And we do that by putting ourselves first. It's the old oxygen mask, in the airplane idea. Yeah. And we've all heard that. And so, man, I love it. All right. So, you told me earlier on, you have a 15% off coupon for Ascension Threads. So we'll have that down below, get you guys loaded up, and start supporting somewhere. And then, how can people get in touch with you for your coaching services?
Well, the easiest way right now is they can connect with me on Facebook. But You've Been Programmed podcast on Facebook. That's our page, and I have group coaching on there. And right now, I have them on there for $60 or for a session. So that's really the only place to directly sign up for coaching. And also, you can private message me on Facebook is a good way. So that's the easiest way, and it doesn't have to be in Costa Rica, but I can work with people. This is what I've been doing the last 6 or 7 years, but it's nice to connect. And sometimes we need someone to hold space for us. We need someone the best coaching that I can provide, and this is the recipe for how I coach, is I teach people that they have all of their own answers. They have all of the answers. I am just here to show them, by me being my truth 100%, it teaches them that they can be their 100% truth. And there's a process, and there's a transformation process that happens within it, but that's the easiest way. And then the coupon for Ascension Threads is Love is the Answer 2019. Okay. So we can list it in there, but Love is the Answer 2019 as we close this year. It's you just put that in, gets you 15% off, and that's live until I believe the first of the year.
Okay. I love it, man. I love it. All right. Hey, how to close the year out strong and prepare for 2020. There's obviously listen to the conversation. You guys have all the answers, but one thing, two things, whatever, wrap it up. Concise statement. What can we do?
Man, I would say we've done this exercise before in many ways, but I would say either two lists. One list is the things that you have that you no longer want, meaning we lived 2019. What are the things that you have that you no longer want? It could be physical things. It could be abstract things. It could be emotions. It could be those. Write them down. And then the things that you don't have that you want. And that could be spiritual development. That could be personal growth. That could be starting a new business. That could be a healthier relationship. That could be no debt. And then you take those lists as you end this year and you do some level of ceremony. It could be just candles at a table. It could be something on that sense. A men's circle or a women's circle would be good too, like with a fire. And then you burn them. I went to a Unity church a few years ago that did one word. What was your word for 2019? And what's your word for 2020? And then you just dropped it in the little bucket that had the fire. But do it with intention. Like, close your eyes. I would say the one thing to focus on in 2020 would be stillness. Stillness. Go deep within self and be open to what comes from that without fear. Without fear. I never thought in a million years I'd play the guitar. I never thought I'd be sitting at a river singing by myself. Never would have thought that in a million years, but it needs to come out, and it comes through stillness when you're not being judged by self and you're not being judged by others, which is still just a self-judgment. You judging yourself that other people are judging you, but find stillness. And then everything at which you do it with intention. If it's not done through love and it's not done with 100% intention, it's not worth doing. It's not worth doing.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'd like to ask you to stick around for just a minute when we're done, but I can hear in the background, good morning. I can hear in the background, a little sneaker through the door. I can hear the birds and everything. Every once in a while I hear it. Somebody got really fired up a second ago. My family just woke up too. What time is it in Costa Rica?
It is 10:15 here.
AM?
I'm gonna show you a little bit of my view.
Yeah.
This is just out my front door. And it's magical. This is a beautiful spot. There's a river back here that I have private access to that is kind of like a sanctuary. It's been such a healing, and I won't go on a soapbox about the word healing, but many times we think that there's something wrong with us or that we're broken, and healing is just clearing density. Just clearing density and coming into our truth and being okay with who we are. Like, that we might like doing art, we might like music, and we might like to meditate or to go walk. Right. So, yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. David, thank you so much. Everybody, I'm going to sign us out right now, but please check out Ascension Threads. Check out the You've Been Programmed podcast, and check out David on Facebook. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to close off. You guys have
Thank you so much, Arn. Appreciate you guys.
You're welcome, man. You guys have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.